No, but let's talk about how resentment, self-abandonment, and shame are like the hallmarks of people pleasing. So if you're somebody who was like forced into people pleasing, especially as like a child, because a caregiver or an adult made you feel like you were going to get punished, abandoned, neglected, whatever, because you stood up for yourself, you had a boundary, and they were like, then when you start to carry that over into adulthood, whether in a relationship that's healthy or unhealthy, platonic, romantic, work, whatever, you might start to feel like you have to do something, or you're going to get fired, you're going to get rejected, you're going to get abandoned, whatever, criticized, blamed, shamed. And whenever we start to try to heal from people pleasing, it's like, oh, well, I feel awful because I'm recognizing all the ways that I self-abandoned. I started to shame myself. I internalized the shame and the blame that other people were putting on me. But also like, wow, I really just like did what other people wanted. You have to, one, start to work on like grieving and forgiving yourself and recognizing that your brain thought that that was the best way for you to protect yourself, especially if you were conditioned as a child to like be like, oh, well, I'm only going to get food, I'm only going to get love, I'm only going to get validation if I overstep my own boundary. So that's why it carries over. So one, start to work with forgiving yourself for that and grieving that you had to like, give up yourself, self-abandon in order to people please for your parents or whoever. And then try to understand that there's going to be this resentment. And a lot of that resentment is one, you kind of projecting the fact that you self-abandoned onto other people and trying to place the blame on other people. Like, oh, well, if they just wouldn't have made me feel bad about having a boundary, then I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have people pleased. But you have to get to a place where you understand that that is that shame, self-abandonment, and resentment all commingling. They're all coexisting at once. It doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be, oh, yes, this person did put me in a position where I felt guilty. I felt shamed by them in order to make them feel better and to do what they need at the expense of myself because I was trying to protect myself because maybe I felt threatened or I didn't want to be abandoned. I wanted community. I wanted love, whatever, while also acknowledging that as an adult, even if what someone else is doing is not right, and I'm by no means victim blaming, you have to recognize that in a lot of situations, especially when it comes to people pleasing, it's like, oh, well, I did not enforce that boundary, because a boundary is something that you tell someone, but you have to enforce it. You have to enforce that boundary. You have to be the one who's like, this is my boundary. I can't force someone else to do something, because a boundary isn't forcing someone else to do something. It is saying that if you don't do what I prefer or what I need or what I want, that's your choice. And, depending on what it is, we really hope that they do respect that boundary. And it would be for the best interest. However, you have to also be like, but I know that I can't control people. I can only control myself, my thoughts, my actions, whatever. And so if you do not respect my boundary, I have to enforce it. I have to either walk away. I have to stop talking to you for a little bit. I have to go, recharge myself, whatever it is that you need to do. But we have to be the people who enforce that. And a lot of the times when that happens, we don't really want to take accountability because we've spent so much time internalizing other people's shame and not validating the fact that people were putting us in positions, especially at a young age, where we didn't feel like we really had a choice. It was like either people please for mommy or daddy or whatever, or again, not get fed, not get love, not get validation, yada, yada. But in a situation now, and that can be even hard as an adult because maybe you're still in a situation where someone has some type of control over you, whether that's financially, whatever. But it's trying to find a middle ground of what can I do to work through this while also recognizing that all these things are coexisting at once. I'm feeling shame. I'm getting shame put on me. I'm almost shaming this other person because I don't feel like they're respecting me, so I'm vilifying them. Now I resent them, but I'm also resenting myself because I'm not enforcing a boundary and I'm self-abandoning, and that's making me feel terrible. And how can you start to humanize yourself and possibly the other person as well, even if you don't like this person after the fact? How can you see that it's two people interacting that are human? Maybe this person genuinely made a mistake. Maybe they didn't. And how can you validate yourself no matter what's going on? So how can you look at the whole experience as a multifaceted situation instead of just this one or the other? Because a lot of people pleasing is that bouncing forth between cognitive distortions, especially all or nothing. It's either all my fault because I self-abandoned, and or it's all this other person's fault because they forced me into that position. Not victim blaming anybody. I understand that there are certain situations where it's like, that was not okay. But there's also a lot of situations too where it's like, where were you not enforcing your boundary? And how can you start to dismantle your own shame and self-abandonment and start to become curious about why you self-abandoned, why you felt the need to do that, and how you can start getting those needs met that you felt like you were going to get by people-pleasing and self-abandoning. How can you start getting those needs met for yourself, by yourself, so that when you're in relationships with other people, whatever the dynamic is, you don't have to rely on them if you're able to figure out how to do that, you know? So I don't know. I just felt like somebody needed to hear that because I certainly did. Otherwise, my name is Sarah. I'm your favorite self-experimenting coach or companion, and I help get people reacquainted with who they most authentically are. You're an amazing person, and I hope you have the best day.